Welcome to episode 28, right? Am I making that right? 28 of the Living Full podcast. This is Richard. I've got Miss Kaitlin in the studio with me, my best friend, wife, travel partner, parenting extraordinaire with me. And we are going to talk a little bit today about roots and wings. So last week, if you listened to the podcast or checked us out on YouTube, we talked a little bit about our travels from Texas to Destin, back to Texas, and all of the states in between. Some might consider them flyover states or Gulf states, but there's some neat ones in there. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. But in the midst of it, I was sending some text messages with my father-in-law, who Kaitlin may not always find him profound. I'm not sure when you're with your parent, if you ever think that they are.
He's pretty profound.
But he's given me some of the best advice, singular pieces that I think I've ever gotten from people that sticks with me. And so we were texting and kind of just having that conversation. And he said, "Thank you for giving my grandchildren the experiences that you've given them through travel." And he mentioned, that I take good care of his daughter, which I do appreciate. But one thing he said that I had never heard before, you may have. Had you heard this phrase before?
Yeah.
Maybe because your dad says it.
Right.
I hadn't, and we've been together a baker's dozen years or so. If not longer than that at this point. 14 maybe? Oh, it's been 14 years. Anyways, been together a while. I had never heard your dad say it, but he had said, I think y'all are doing a great job. But what I had said was, it's a struggle sometimes because you don't know, am I doing the right things with my kids, trying to give them experiences and things that I didn't have?
Yeah.
And we've talked about that a lot. We've struggled with the whole aspect of how do you not raise spoiled brats and still give them a lifetime of experiences. It's a dichotomy. That's a word I've used a lot the past couple months, but there's a balance to it for sure.
Yeah.
And he said, well, here's my thing. If you can give them roots and wings, you've succeeded. And so I really had been thinking about that the past couple of weeks. And so I thought we'd briefly, we'll do a quick podcast and talk about what that means to us. Because I think it does fit well in with what we've talked about. Because we've talked quite a bit privately about some of the things our kids say unintentionally because they don't know different.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. My dad is, but as a father to me and as a young girl, he was a very hard worker. He still is. He didn't always work normal hours. Sometimes he was working nights, depending on what it was that he was doing at the time. And so I don't feel like we ever had maybe a week or 2 weeks to just be gone, on vacation when I was little, like we do with our children. And so some of those trips would be to like a nearby lake house, family lake house, or my dad was just very, and still is. I mean, he always tells me he would live in one of those teardrop trailers down by the river, like on however much acreage, no neighbors, like just leave me alone, give me, give me the solitude.
On Facebook that are like, could you live in this cabin for a month without Wi-Fi?
He would
for $1 million. He's like, I'd pay you $1 million to go do that without people around me.
That's like his idea of paradise. So, my dad, we have had some really, really sweet and meaningful conversations under the stars, and he was the dad that took us camping, like tent camping. Even if we were staying somewhere like at a family's lake house, for instance, because we have lots of childhood memories there, like he would want to give us that extra experience if we wanted it. Like, hey, I brought the tent, let's sleep outside tonight. Telescopes, like he is into not into astrology, but like
astronomy. Let's get that.
Oh, so yeah, astronomy. That's what I meant. But he can tell you like the constellations and where they are in the stars, and
he can find them for you if you need to find where
he loves all of that.
Is.
Yeah, and so we've had some really like deep conversations, sort of under the stars, out in the middle of nowhere sometimes, and So while it wasn't, you know, the Egyptian pyramids or the Eiffel Tower, I feel like, I mean, that's just not what I had or what I needed at the time. And I feel like he was able, with what he had, to provide both roots and wings. And I know that now because he gave us sort of a gentle nudge into kind of doing whatever it is that we wanted to do. Like, he never tried to guide us in any one direction, but he did give us guidance, obviously. But then now as an adult, like, you long to go back home, and there's something really sweet about that. Like, I definitely have roots to my family, in my extended family. And
y'all are a pretty tight knit group, and I didn't grow up with the, I guess, the sheer quantity of family that you have.
Yeah.
I have a couple cousins.
Yeah.
I've lost some along the way, unfortunately. You have multitude. You had part of it is, like, I wasn't part of a divorced household, and neither were you, but my sisters were, obviously. And then you had a lot of family that were, so you kind of had you had some of these split households that created more households, and I think in a lot of situations, people aren't close in those.
Yeah, it'll drive like half the family away, but we have half and step and second and all the different types of cousins and family
and
you can have.
A lot of, I mean, you had 5 or 6 siblings in certain generations, whereas I just feel like I didn't have the same experience.
Yeah.
But I think looking back, and maybe this is where we have to pause and say we are doing the right things. I think I wrote after my dad passed away that at the time I didn't always think he gave me enough. But looking back now, he gave me everything he had,
right?
Which was enough.
Absolutely,
and we didn't travel a lot. I mean, I went fishing with my dad, and we did what we could. He worked really weird hours and shift work, and we went on a few family vacations here or there through the years, but definitely not with the. We've taken our kids more places this year than I traveled in 20 years with my parents,
right?
And so we just balance that, though, because we hear our kids who have, albeit they've gone to a small Christian school in their tenure, with other kids who, for the most part, have traveled.
So different family backgrounds, to go on a summer.
Think it's normal,
yeah.
And so they say things like, "Well, where are we going?" And some of it could come across as bratty at times,
like you're expecting this trip because it's all they've ever known.
But it's not intentional,
right?
It's just matter of fact. And so it's that balance of how do we raise kids who are grateful for the experiences and the things that they've had without being entitled. And so the roots and the wings, I mean, I think part of that is, and it's part of why we've chosen Christian school, like elementary. And I've been reading a lot about homeschooling lately, and kind of that circle, and it's been on Caitlin's heart and mind for a long time. But like the concepts of, doing things our way. And we've got to lay a foundation. Even if our kids go into public school the rest of their lives and graduate from that, that's perfectly fine. We feel like in the first 6-7 years of life have laid a foundation that's Christ-centered, service-centered, probably different than what you normally would get. But I think that's that roots too. I mean, you can look at it from a lot of different ways, but I think some of that roots are a foundation. Jim Drake, who may be listening, I mean, it's I just never forget. It's one of those influential moments. You know what I'm going to say. He told us, we were just married, just moved back to Sweetwater, and he was living in another town, and he told me, you just grow where you're planted. And that has so stuck with me. It doesn't matter where you are in life, physically, emotionally.
You give it your all.
You grow where you're planted.
Yeah.
It may not be the best environment, but plants grow in some crazy spots.
Yeah.
Not much dirt, not much water, but they can figure out how to make it happen. And so I think part of that roots, like having something that you can lean back on, and something that, it's that foundation of life that we're trying to give them, but also give them. We've also met people, and I know you can go and just, like, not to cut you off, but that have not, they've given their children like concrete roots. Like they're afraid to leave the nest, and
Yeah.
they don't want them to leave the nest either. And you end up with
anxiety,
Mhm.
Separation anxiety or whatever. It's a hard balance. And if I'm completely honest, like I have anxiety thinking about my kids someday leaving us. It is not a happy place for me. However, I know that what needs to happen in the chronological order of life is, you raise your kids, you raise them to be successful and independent, and then they move on, and that's normal and that's natural, and we should love that. And I think that a lot of parents do kind of feel that way, like how am I supposed to, watch every move and be here for every single thing, and then just one day let them go. But then if I calm myself down a bit and look back, I mean, my mom had to do that with me and my siblings. Her mom did that with her. I mean, everybody has, and it works out and it turns out okay.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
I mean, there
I will,
are some outliers in that.
Of course, there's always outliers, but I will always have, hopefully, a welcoming, warm home for them. I try really hard to make home. I love home so much. I'm always ready to come back home no matter where we've been. I love my home. And it doesn't matter, obviously, about the walls. It matters what's inside the home. I feel like we have a loving home, and
it's funny how different the kids can be on that too, because I didn't move around as a kid, neither did you. You grew up in 2 houses. I grew up in 1.
mm-hmm.
And so we've been more of gypsies as adults than we ever were as kids.
Mm-hmm.
But Macy wants to be home.
Yeah,
like
she does.
She's
likes
good to go
be
travel for a week and a half, but
mm-hmm.
after 9 or 10 days, she gets homesick. And
she's
like, I want to go home.
Even though her parents are with her.
Yeah,
she's
her whole world's with her. But
yeah.
she's like, no, I'd really like to be home.
Mm-hmm.
And Meredith is a gypsy soul.
She is.
And she may travel the world someday without us or with us. And
mm-hmm.
and I actually feel it's just so weird as parents.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she'll spread her wings and I'm not worried about her. You may feel 100% different about each kid, like how we feel about it. Like, but
they're all different.
They are all different. And I just hope they make better decisions than I ever made. Hopefully they take after you.
Everybody hopes that for their children.
Yeah, but some people make good decisions. I made pretty poor ones at times until I met you. And then, obviously made really good decisions after that.
They'll find somebody that'll either help or maybe they'll help. And, I a lot of that you just have to have faith and pray that God has the one for them waiting. And, I mean, there's only so many things we can actually help, but the roots I've really focused on, and then the wings have been more verbal so far. Our oldest is only 9 out of 4 kids.
Yeah,
so
but you want them to have wings too, in that go do those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do not be afraid to spread those wings. And
right.
Some of it's taking that, some of it to me, and there's so many analogies, there's so many directions you can go with roots and wings. And maybe we'll talk about it again later and how we feel and like expand on that some. But like the wing part of it to me is, it's that whole analogy of standing on a cliff and like you've got to take a step and you have to have faith that you're either going to fly or fall.
Yeah.
And to give them that nudge,
mm-hmm.
like mama bird, pushing one out of the nest that isn't ready to fly.
Yeah.
The only way that you get ready to fly is getting your butt kicked out of the nest, right?
And so there's a big thing there, sort of a big lesson, I think, that a lot of parents maybe don't want to do that. And so maybe that's not best for your kids. And maybe, you always think about or hear about like enabling children forever, whether it's financially or you're enabling them to live some certain lifestyle or unhealthy habit or whatever it is. I think that's part of it. In order to not enable your kids to do something, you kind of got to say, then you're on your own, buddy. I can't do this for you anymore.
And it's hard. And that's where
the
I
hardest
struggle
thing
with,
I think we'll ever have to do if it gets there.
Yeah, it even goes back to it's been several years ago teaching Macy how to ride a bike. And Daddy Bear, Papa Bear here, was more
Scared.
apprehensive of it, and I held onto her seat a little too much.
He held onto her seat, and it was making her wobble. I said, Richard, she's not going to know how it feels to really be on her own and pedaling unless you let go. He was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, well, just push her. Just get the seat.
She makes that sound really nice and sweet. She went out there and threw that poor kid down the road.
And she, what?
She rode her bike till she hit her curb and face planted, but she got up
she
and did it again.
She didn't face plant then. She fell over maybe. You know what, though? She learned how to ride a bike in a day after that.
She did. No, I was giving you kudos. It just still gave
backhanded kudos.
It gave me some anxiety. But you went out there and you pushed her out of the nest.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to.
But
you know what?
She knew how to ride a bike.
I vividly remember the day my dad did that to me, and it was downhill. Like my house was up on a hill.
Doing that to you.
And he let go of my seat and he was like, go, go, go. And I just remember, like, I'll never forget that feeling of flying down this hill. And like, I was sort of braking the whole time and I wasn't slowing down. And I was just like, oh, and thinking back on it, like, what if a car had been coming? I didn't really know what I was doing yet. It was my very first time.
Oh, it was the early 1990s. I'm sure you were fine.
Anyway. But the roots, there's something very comfortable still to this day about my family, my parents. Like they really do feel comfortable to me. They feel home to me, even whenever they come visit me at my house, which obviously isn't where I grew up. Like it's comfortable and comforting to have them here. Just their presence is a comfortable root type feeling for me. And so, you know, physical touch and words of affirmation and all of these things that we hear about in our life with relationships and with couples. I mean, you have to do those things with your kids too. And so when they curl up on the couch with me and I'm holding them, and you're not looking on your phone, you're in the moment with your kid, holding them, talking to them, touching them, telling them that, you know, you're so proud of them and that you love them. Talking about their day. I mean, we have very open lines of communication with our kids, and I think they're pretty open with us. And sometimes you kind of have to ask some probing questions and to get some information out. But I think all of those things form those deep, good roots.
Yeah. I think that could, you know, when people have like childhood trauma
Mm-hmm.
and don't develop that, it's hard to ever overcome it. No matter what else happens in your
Yeah.
life. You either take extreme independence because of trauma, or you take extreme dependence a lot of times.
You stay childlike. And the reason I can certainly relate to this because I have a family member that experienced that. And so that was sort of like in the back of my mind growing up, because it was obvious, but then I also had knowledge of it. And I can't imagine going through something traumatic as a child, like what happened in my family, to somebody else, but it never happened. You know, I had a very normal childhood for all intents and purposes, and hopefully we're giving that same thing to our kids. And so they won't have, you know, a traumatic event, hopefully to keep them either in that childlike brain or have that fierce independence. It's almost like you don't care who you're running over if it's best for you, you know, because they had to survive, their survival.
Well, and I have some of those independent traits due to things that happen. I won't call it trauma,
Mm-hmm.
but life events that
Yeah.
I had no control over.
Yeah.
I have a streak of extreme independence where I don't need anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I can do it myself, like a 3-year-old.
Yes.
I can handle it. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Which has served me well in life, but I've had to overcome obstacles with it because you also don't trust and love easily because of that.
Well, when somebody tries to point out maybe a better way to do things, it's like you could take it as a personal attack. Like what you're doing isn't good enough.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
You trying to come at me with that one right now?
No, I'm just saying.
I'm joking.
If
joking.
it's part of it.
It is.
It's part of it.
I might have taken that as a personal attack 10 years ago. I've learned though, but I think some of that's roots. I mean, I'm missing some things. I feel, and we won't get into the whole. We've talked about psychologists probably tell you I was tweaked. But I mean, I think that there are things that I hope that my kids understand differently than maybe I did. That they have that foundation, and that's the point. We wanted to talk a little bit about roots and wings. I think that we may develop that more as we go along and talk about some of this in the future. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I was just looking, and there's this psychology website, and it says roots allow for the development of wings because they create the grounded child necessary to feel safe in exploring the world around them. There is no question that the way a family functions will define to a large measure how well a child will develop. And so that roots and wings is really child development. I mean, they need to have both to feel secure and to move on normal, like in an average, healthy way, moving from child to adult. So, just as we talk about these
part
things.
Part of the healthy part of that is pushing the kids out of the nest too.
Right. And that's what I meant by not enabling them to become dependent upon you.
But it's not, we don't have to get into that. I understand the enabling part, but well, it is enabling, but saying like, for example, when a kid doesn't want to do something, because they think that they're not good at it, or it's uncomfortable, or they're scared, saying, giving them the nudge, because like, and I was thinking about this today. You were laughing. It was almost an Influencers in the Wild moment because I was in the backyard recording something while I was cooking on my phone, and she's like, "Why are you yelling into your phone?" I was like, "Well, I thought I was talking nicely," but I mean, I was
looking at him through a window, and it looked like he was screaming at somebody on FaceTime. I was like,
"No, I was trying to record a reel on Instagram," but what it was, I was thinking about, and I was thinking about Macy in particular because she has a really bad. It's not a bad thing, but like she'll be like, "I'm not good at it." And I'm like, you've done it once. But yeah. I just think about how many people have that mindset that I'm not good at this. Well, you tried once. I want to just say, how many things have I sucked at the first time I did it? Everything. There has been nothing in my life that I have been inherently good at the first time I tried it.
Right.
And if I had to quit every time, I'd have never made a sell in my life.
Yeah. She wants to be good. I mean, she doesn't really she doesn't want the learning curve. And so, especially when it's the first couple of times that she's tried something, if somebody else has done it for say 2 or 3 years and they're at this level and she's, down here, whatever it is, sports, whatever.
Piano, it's school, it's
she takes that like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not good at this, or this must not be my thing because I'm not as good as so-and-so. And it's like, honey, they have done so much groundwork, so much more than what you've done. They should be better than you right now.
Or when she compares herself like academically to kids that are a year to 2 years older than her, and she's doing the same level things, but she's frustrated that she's not ahead of them. And so, I mean, some of that though is like, you just have to. And I'm glad that we played softball this year because it was something out of her comfort zone. It was something out of my comfort zone. Because like I said, soccer, basketball, those are the sports that we know and love well. And neither of us were really star athletes on the diamond by any means. And so to get out there, but I've had to push her because there's times she's looked at me and said, I'm not good at this, or I can't do this. I'm like, you can.
I think though, some of that as a parent, you know, when it's appropriate to push your kids.
Sometimes, because
sometimes maybe he doesn't, but like you wouldn't push Macy into doing like a musical solo, like a vocal solo right now with little to no training. That sort of thing would be
if she ever came to me
terrifying to her
and said, "Hey Dad, I want to sing a solo in the musical," I'd push her.
Yeah,
even when a week into it, she's like, "I can't do this."
Yeah, but that there at least would have been some spark or some want to in her to mention it. Like, she's not going to say that to you if it's never crossed her mind. I just mean, There are things that we'll push our first child to do that we would not push our second child to do. And there are things that we would push our second child to do that we wouldn't push our first to do. And so that's what I mean. But like, I think you have to gauge that as the parent. Like, when is it okay to kind of keep pushing because you know that they can do this?
Birds do that. They know one's not ready and one is, and they push one out of the nest earlier.
Well, good thing
we're not just let them all fall out.
Birds. I think it's like a mean thing to tell somebody they have a bird brain for a reason. We're humans.
No. Yeah, no, that's legit. So, roots and wings. We want our kids to have roots. We want them to have a solid foundation that is centered around what we consider our ethos of faith, family, finance, and fitness. Mm-hmm. I feel like as parents, if we can instill those 4 values in them to understand things at a young age that we didn't, about finances, about businesses, about fitness. God, I spent 25 years treating my body like an old honky tonk. Is that how the song goes? I
don't know.
Yeah, I think Tim McGraw said that. Spent the first 30 years.
Oh.
Yeah. I think I got past it before 30, but I mean, there's a legitimacy to giving them that foundation, those roots, but they also can't do the things that I want them to do necessarily. Like, I have to give them wings to go do their own things.
Right. Yes.
As much as I'd want one of them or 2 of them or 3 or 4, all 4 of them to say, hey, we're going to run these businesses and be a part of this empire.
Mm-hmm.
They may not care a thing about what I build
or
what we build. And I have to be okay with that.
That's right.
And that's going to be one of my biggest struggles.
Yeah. I mean, but how, okay, but then if you turn it back to you and somebody tried to tell you not to do the things that you wanted to do, whether this was your mom and dad's dream for you or not, what the life you're living, if you had listened to them, you wouldn't have been happy.
No, I wouldn't be.
So, I mean, we have to give our kids that free will.
It's hard. So if you're out there really struggling with roots and wings on your kids and trying to figure it all out, none of us have it figured out, but we're going to give it a whirl. If you like what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review, take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram story, share it on Facebook, Twitter. Just get the word out there for Live It Full. We want to help people with their faith, family, finance, and their fitness, because what do those 4 things equal? They equal freedom.
That's right.
Thank you for listening to episode number 28 of the Live It Full podcast. We hope you have a great week. If you have any questions, hit us on our DMs on social media or send us an email at info@liveitfull.com.